Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri, wahlul uqtatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. So, jazakallah khair again to you all for joining. And if you're joining now, you are here at the Ramadan Parenting Conference by Towards Faith and Learning Roots. And myself and Zaheer, we've invited a few other people along to join the Avengers team, the Avengers of parents, to help you all in your parenting journey, nurturing spirituality in your child from a young age, and giving them the key ingredients on, what is it that they require? What is the recipe to have a great and nurture a great Muslim child? So without further ado, let's get started. Bismillah. So I want to introduce the first speaker, Captain Zaheer, who's the managing director at Learning Roots. And mashallah, I connected with Zaheer a couple of years ago, and this brother has been undercover, and he's created a fantastic brand. He's a specialist in faith-centered children's education, and I'm really excited to hear from him on what are the key ingredients that we should instill in our child so that we can raise a great Muslim child. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I'll put my video off and I'll pass myself over to Zaheer.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Can you hear me? All good. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Jazakallah khair, assalamu alaikum to everybody, and jazakallah khair for joining us from wherever you are around the world. I would normally say it's evening time, but probably there are people around the world where it may be morning or afternoon. So depending on wherever you are around the world, a warm welcome and assalamu alaikum to you all. And inshallah, hopefully these few minutes that you'll be investing with us will be a benefit to you and your children, inshallah. So as you may know, as Shahbaz has kindly introduced me, I am Zaheer, also known as Captain at Learning Roots. And I'm going to be talking about something that's very dear, so dear to me, in fact, that we based our entire company mission around it. And that's how to raise a great Muslim child. And today I'll be sharing just three key ingredients. They're not the only things that go into making a great Muslim child, but they're certainly key ingredients that you'll need in your parenting toolkit that we all need in that journey as we look to raise children that will be beacons of light in this world and the next for us, inshallah. But before we start, obviously the big question must be, what do you mean by great? What does great mean? What does it mean to be a great child? So obviously at Learning Roots, we've thought about this a lot. And essentially, to simplify, it comes down to what Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran very often. You probably all know the ayat that mention إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Indeed, those who believe and who work good deeds. So this is essentially what it is. It's children who have a strong connection with Allah Azza wa Jal. We like to call it an unrelenting faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all the other tenets of Islam that stay with them throughout their life. And those tenets then push them to do great deeds, great deeds, not just for the benefit of themselves in terms of their worship, but also to make positive contributions to the people and the world around them. It's as simple as that. So let's now get into three key ingredients, and these ingredients have been taken from the lives of the prophets. In particular, Surah Yusuf, and the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, and the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and I'll also be referring, of course, to the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So let's start with the first one. The first one is, the first key ingredient in raising a great Muslim child that we'll be sharing tonight is to use encouraging words that raise their aspirations. So ask yourself, when you speak to your child, how do you speak to them? What's the general tone? Is it something that's demeaning? Is it something that is uplifting? Is it just neutral? Is it just day to day? Consider the story when Yusuf alayhi salam goes to his father, Yaqub alayhi salam, and he tells him about the dream. You all know the story, so I'm not going to repeat it. But what's really interesting is how Yaqub alayhi salam, the father, responds to the son. He says, وَكَذَلِكَ يَجْتَبِيكَ رَبُّكَ وَيُعَلِّمُكَ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. So he says, and this is how your Lord has chosen you, O Yusuf, and he will teach you the interpretations of dreams. And then he goes on to say, وَيُتِمُّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكَ, and he will perfect his favor upon you, just as he perfected it upon your forefathers Ibrahim and Ishaq. Indeed, your Lord is all-knowing and all-wise. So what just happened there? Yaqub alayhi salam has not just responded to his son's dream, but raised his aspirations that this is about a sign of something great. You're going to become somebody of great stature in this world. You're going to become somebody who others will look up to, and you're going to follow in the great footsteps of your forefathers Ibrahim and Ishaq alayhi salam. And even in the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we know even his grandfather Abdul Muttalib, who passed away, before Islam, but he used to take the Prophet as a young child, and he would sit him down in the councils of Quraysh, and he would sit him down in the head seat. And this was like unknown. People wouldn't do this before. Like it wasn't culturally appropriate, if you like, to put a young child in that seat. But he would take his grandson, place him in that seat, and he would say, "This son of mine," meaning this is his grandson, "this son of mine will be the leader of the Arabs." And what happened? The Prophet's message spread throughout the world. But there's that aspiration that being set, even in times of Jahiliyyah. So there you have it. Now, you might be thinking about yourself. Okay, well, I don't have great lineage. I don't have, those great examples in my life. But that's not the excuse, right? You're part of this ummah. This ummah is a great ummah. This ummah has the likes of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, of Umar radiallahu anhu, of Fatima, of Khadija radiallahu anha. It has the likes of the greats that came afterwards, Imam al-Bukhari and Salahuddin and Imam al-Ghazali and so many others that came, in the past and will still come in the future. We are all part of this family of greatness. And indeed, we belong to this ummah, and there's enough inspiration there for us to take. So that's the first thing, encouraging your child to raise their aspirations. Think carefully about how you speak to your children, how you can raise their aspirations. Now, once you've done that, once you've got to a stage where your child is thinking big, then what? The second key ingredient is to vary their life experiences. You are essentially the nurturer of your child. You're the one who's selecting where you want your child to be. We do this naturally as parents. We don't go to that person's house. I want you to have a bit of experience there. I'd like you to meet this person. I think it's good for you to do this. I think you should try out Scouts. I think it will build your character. These sorts of things are very much how we should be thinking about children, and in terms of varying their experiences in particular. Look at the life of Yusuf alayhi salam. Look what happened to him. He started his life in Midian with his loving parents. He's then thrown down a well, very distressing for a child. Then he's sold into slavery. Then he lives the life inside as a slave or as a servant, I should say, in the house of Aziz, in the minister. And then he's thrown into prison. Then he becomes a minister himself. Yeah. Is it any surprise that Yusuf alayhi salam, who grew up in the house of the minister, ends up becoming the minister at the end? Is it any surprise that Musa alayhi salam, who grew up in the palace of Fir'aun, ends up ruling the people of Egypt in the end? Yeah, think about that for a moment. So similarly, if you want your child or see your child in a particular place or want them to be in a particular place, then we do need to expose them to those areas or those experiences that would lead them to assume those positions in the future. And subhanAllah, look at the story of Musa alayhi salam. He's thrown into the river by his mother in a basket. He ends up at the doorstep of the enemy of Fir'aun in his palace, and he grows up in that palace. Then he becomes a fugitive and he escapes to Midian, and then he meets Allah Azza wa Jalla, and his story continues. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right at the end of mentioning all these favors upon him, he says, وَاصْطَنَعْتُكَ لِنَفْسِي, like I molded you for myself, Musa alayhi salam. This is what it's about. So moving your child out of their comfort zone, thinking about what their strengths are, how you can bolster their weaknesses. For example, if they're, for example, shy in social interactions, is it right for me to necessarily just shield them, or should I put them into that situation? You need to think about that. Yeah, vary their experiences and take them out of their comfort zones so that they grow stronger. And that's the point. And when that happens, when you start to take them out of their comfort zone, we're coming now to the third point, they will naturally fall. They will naturally, if you like, not do as well or fail. They will go through difficulties. And the main issue here is when that happens, and this is the third key ingredient, is to give them hope. That these times will come, but it's not a case of us losing hope. So you might see it, obviously you may have seen it with your own children, that they do something and they become disheartened. Oh, I can't do this now. I'll never do this. I'll never be good enough. Those words are not befitting for a Muslim. Yeah, it's extremely important that we, for example, think about when Musa alayhi salam came to the splitting of the sea, and there were naysayers behind him. Yeah, he's at the sea, and he's got the army of Fir'aun behind him, and his people are right in front of them, and they're saying, okay, that's it, finished. We're going to be caught by Fir'aun. He's gonna massacre us. It's over. But Musa alayhi salam says, Kalla inna ma'i rabbi sayahdin. No way, no way. My Lord is with me, and he's going to guide me out. He had hope in that moment. Think about the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when the people of Ta'if, and again, you guys, you know these stories, so I don't need to repeat them. But think about the time when he was thrown out of Ta'if, alayhi salatu wasalam, and he was given the option, yeah, by the angel that that this town could be destroyed between the two mountains of Ta'if. But he said no, because perhaps from these people there will be, from their children will be those who will grow up to say La ilaha illallah. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah, in that moment of distress, he had that hope. And think of Yusuf alayhi salam in the well as well. Like, imagine such a distressing time for a child to be thrown in a well, not knowing if he's going to survive. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُم بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. And we inspire to Yusuf alayhi salam that one day, you will inform them, meaning your brothers, of this deed, while they're not even aware of it, or while they're not even aware of who you are. So again, that's building the resilience of the child. Now, so those are the three key ingredients that I've shared with you. But I don't want to leave you with this, because there's one really key point that we must take when it comes to understanding any advice, whether it's these pieces of advice or others that you're going to hear, when it comes to raising children. And that is that you need to take every piece of advice with a pinch of salt. Why do I say that? Because every child is different. Every time is different. Every context is different. Every situation is different. Every land is different. And as the murabbi, as the nurturer, as the parent, as the carer, as the teacher of your child, this is where you step in. It's up to you to understand that, you know what, I could give my child a word of encouragement right now, but that might just overwhelm him or her at this moment. So perhaps it's better that I tone it down, or I'll save it for another time. Like, even this word of encouragement, maybe I can't speak it to my toddler because they don't even understand me. You know, you have to understand the time and the place of when these words are correct. So similarly about varying experiences, it may not be the best time to do that. It may not, a particular instance of trying to force them into a place where you're trying to vary their experiences to grow their character may not be the best thing for them. And who knows that? You do. Yeah, it's your experience as a parent that informs that. And of course, you ask Allah Azza wa Jalla for help as well through dua. And then, of course, when it comes to the issue again about raising children, when it comes to giving them hope, again, sometimes it may not be the right time, it may not be the right place, the way you do it, how you say it, all these things matter. And that's the role of the parent, is understanding when you get all these pieces of advice from that parents, do this with your child, don't do that with your child, when they're this age, do this, do that. You have to process that, and experience, hopefully, and good advice will teach you when and where to apply that to your child. Sometimes things make sense only a few years after you've seen them or heard them. And then you understand, oh yeah, that makes sense, but it didn't make sense then. It kind of, I understand that piece of advice, it kind of applies here now. And so anyway, nonetheless, the 3 points I've shared with you are, they're still timeless, they still work, they're still key ingredients in raising a great Muslim child, and they're part of the hero's journey. Yeah, the whole point of the hero, as we said, if we want our children to be great children, is to raise their aspirations, to go through that grind, to go through the experiences that they need to go through, and to overcome those challenges with the hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they grow stronger. And if they do that, they will grow as great children, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Anyway, that's all I have to say. So I first of all thank everybody for listening, and I hope that you found that beneficial. And I pray Allah Azza wa Jal blesses us and our families to be able to raise great Muslim children for the benefit of ourselves and our akhirah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Barakallahu feek, Zaheer. MashaAllah, that was incredible. And I asked the participants what are the 3 ingredients that you had mentioned, and we just got a flurry of comments and messages of a summary, mashallah, of your talk. So Brother Hamid has said using encouraging words that raise their aspirations. He's also said varying their life experiences, Maliha has said, give them hope, encouragement, exposure, support, a high aspiration, taking them out of their comfort zone. Rizwana said, standing by them to support them in all walks of life. Zainab has said, use encouraging words. The Prophet Yaqub raises the Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam's aspirations after he tells him of his dream, which is a really good observation, Sister Zainab. And there's 28 more comments, so I'm not able to go through all of them. But mashallah, jazakallah khair to all of you for your summary and summarizing Zaheer's talk for everyone else. And jazakallah khair to you, Zaheer, for delivering that. I think there's a couple of questions in relation to your talk, but if you don't mind, we can perhaps delay and address them at the end, if that's okay. Perfect. You're nodding your head. Excellent.
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Okay, so just if you've joined this session very recently, this is the Ramadan Parenting Conference by Towards Faith and Learning Roots. And we're moving on to our second speaker now, Sister Naheedah Ahmed, who's from Towards Faith and one of our team members. And mashallah, one of the things that I personally want to say before Naheedah speaks is, just even on a 5-minute conversation with Naheedah, you will learn so much on how to nurture spirituality in your child from a young age. Naheedah has worked as a sort of a trainee teacher, as a teacher in Islamic schools in and around London. But one thing that I would say that's even more pertinent in terms of her experience is the approach and the pedagogy that she adopts when it comes to nurturing that spirituality in your child from a very young age. And as I said before, a 5-minute conversation with Naheedah actually completely changes what you're doing with your child, how you're spending your time with your child. Is that interactive? Is it meaningful? Is it engaging? Is it developing them? Or is that time actually just being wasted in the 5 or 10 minutes or hour that you spend with them in the evening? So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Naheedah Ahmed, who's the author of the My Little Legacy journals by Towards Faith. And without further ado, I'd like to bring on Sister Naheedah to introduce herself and her talk, Nurturing Spirituality from a Young Age. Over to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair for introducing me. So I'm Naheedah and the author of the Beautiful Names of Allah journals and Ramadan journals with Towards Faith. Alhamdulillah, I was given an amazing opportunity to work with them. And since then, we have been producing these journals and inshallah continue to work to produce more. I'm going to begin my speech talk with a story. The Prophet ﷺ gave a lot of his talks and teaching young children through storytelling. And this is a hadith that really is one of my favorite hadiths actually. And it was when Abdullah ibn Abbas was a young boy. He said he was riding behind the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he said, "Oh lad, I shall teach you some words of advice. Be mindful of Allah and Allah will protect you. Be mindful of Allah and you will find him in front of you. If you ask, then ask Allah alone. And if you seek help, then seek help from Allah alone. And know that if the people were to gather together to benefit you with anything, they would not benefit you except with what Allah had already prescribed for you. And if you were to gather together to harm you with anything, they would not harm you except with what Allah had already prescribed against you. The pens have been lifted and the pages have dried." Now, this was a piece of advice that the Prophet ﷺ gave to Ibn Abbas. And before this advice was given, the Prophet ﷺ had already built a great sense of bond, love, relationship, and trust with him. So before that, there was a lot that was happening for him to gain that trust and relationship with him. And when this advice was given, it was given at a time when they were having fun. It wasn't like an instruction, a lecture. They were horse riding, and that's when this beautiful advice was given. And that's how children like to learn. Like, that's how you can get through to them, is when they're having fun. They're less likely to listen to you if you sit there and start giving them a lecture. And in order for the children to, your child to listen to you, you've got to build that love and that bond with them and that trust with them, because eventually that will then get them to become your friend, and teaching them after that, it seems it's a lot easier. I mean, instead of spending most of our time disciplining them, that's how we should take that approach. And the first question that I always ask myself is, before even thinking about teaching my child, is, why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us on this earth? And that's something we should ask ourselves in everything we do. What does Allah want from you as a parent or guardian in raising your children? So we are here to worship and please Allah in everything we do. So your role as a parent guardian is to be that role model to your child. So going on to things like the screen time, when you do give that screen time to your child, what is it that they're doing to please Allah? What is it that they're watching to please Allah? So there are a number of things that I've done with my own child, practical approaches I've taken to ensure that I'm nurturing that spirituality right from birth. And yes, I mean from birth. So the first thing is I prepared myself mentally. I saw around me a lot of screen time being given, and I just thought to myself, is this going to be me, right? Am I going to give in? And I remember telling one of my friends that I'm not going to give screen time to my child. And she laughed and said, you know what, I'm going to write this day down. Alhamdulillah, my child is now 3 years old, and I didn't give in to screens. So the first thing I do is reduce my own screen time. I've limited my Instagram notification to 30 minutes, and it mentally tells me, like, you know, you've been on here for 30 minutes, it's time to come off now. And that really does help. I've also realized that my child was starting to see me on my phone and associated me with that phone. So if I was to leave the room, she would come and give the phone to me, because I'm like, if I'm on it all the time. The other thing that I've done is, from a young age, I used to play recitation to my child since she was a baby. That's how I would put her to sleep. So I would leave Surah Baqarah played in the background, and I'll let her sleep. And I still do that. So I've done that, and then I've also played Ayatul Kursi on repeat. And what I've realized is, by doing that, she now has memorized Ayatul Kursi. Yes, I've sat here and there to recite it with her, but majority of the time I just left it playing while she was sleeping. And that really helped. The other thing I realized is, a lot of the times we give our children the screens, a phone, is when it comes to breakfast time, dinner time, lunchtime, and because we want them to eat. So when I would give my child the phone in the morning, it would only be to play the adhkar. And there's one on YouTube that I always used, and I used to play that, and she started picking up on it. And then what I would do is create little activities, things like Montessori type toys, wooden toys that are get them thinking, and I would use those in the morning whilst I'm feeding her, and that would engage her and keep her busy. Then after that, there was no more phones after that. And what has now happened is, she will then say to me, Mummy, I want the puzzles, I want this, I want that, but not the phone. So that was another thing that I've done. Also, having conversations with them. The conversations you have with your child should all relate back to Allah. And I didn't even realize that I was having these conversations about how much Allah loves her, how much, you know, how many things Allah has given her, that one day when I asked her, who loves you the most? To my surprise, she actually said Allah. I mean, I was hoping she'll say Mummy, but she said Allah, and I was taken aback, and I thought, oh, okay, so why does Allah love you the most? And she said, because He created me. So every conversation that I was having that I actually forgot about since she was a baby, she was internalizing everything. And when she was able to speak and voice her speech, she was telling me this. The other thing is screen time. There are times I do give the screen. I do give the TV. There are times you have to get on with your daily tasks, daily chores. And when I do give that screen time, I restrict it to what I want her to see. So I would only give her things like Omar and Hannah in Arabic or anything in Arabic from a young age. And then I started to realize that she was picking up on Arabic. So she was starting to use Arabic words, confusing us all because we didn't even know what she was asking for. Sometimes she asked for things like Mosa. We're just like, what is that? And she was using these words just from what she was listening to from a young age. And this is, I don't speak Arabic. So this was all from what I gave her. So she does sometimes ask for cocomelon, but no, I don't give it. So you are in charge here. You are in control of that. So it's up to you what you give to them. It's up to you how much time you give to them. And according to the World Health Organization, from the under the age of 2, you shouldn't be giving them any screen time at all. And between 2 and 5, it says up to an hour, but less is better. So if you can completely avoid it, it's better because the screen and everything, it affects the development of the child. 0 to 5, the development is so rapid, their development, that it affects everything later on in their life. So 0 to 5, if you can completely avoid the screen, your child, mashallah, would develop a lot. And if you can engage more in the child playing, being outside, exercising, those types of things, that will have a huge impact on their development. The other thing was I used on YouTube was surahs. So there was cartoons that I would play, but they would have recitation on top of the short surahs. And just from that, alhamdulillah, she's 3 yet, she's managed to learn 5 to 6 surahs from there, just from listening. I also realized that with the screens, with the phones from a young age, when I did give her an iPad once, I gave puzzles. But what happened is she kept asking for it, but then the battery died. And after that, the battery was dead for about a year now. And I've just never charged it. So whenever she asked for it, she just got used to like not asking for it anymore because I just never gave it. And it made me realize that what we build in our routine is what they're going to follow. So if you put that phone and that tablet into your routine, that is what they're used to. And it just showed that it wasn't something she needed. Instead, she will engage more in the play and everything else I offered, like Montessori type toys, a lot of the learning routes activities, books I've got actually, and she takes it out herself and starts learning it. So those are the things that I did with my child. And also whenever I would go out, I would also prepare activities. That's another thing. I've realized that we give the phone when we're outside so we can have our meal in peace. So I would take like watercolor paints, things that she enjoys, and take those with me and do those outside as well. So alhamdulillah, those are the things that I've done. And it really, really does help. And the main thing I would just say is that the spirituality part and the nurturing that is a lot from conversation, storytelling in everything that you do. My child is fascinated by the moon. And like, even if she asks me a simple question about the moon, I will relate it back to Allah. She will ask, why is the moon not moving? Well, it only moves with the permission of Allah, and it is actually moving. We just can't see it. So every conversation you have, relate it back to Allah, and if you can, the names of Allah as well. And it's just through conversation. And I find that quite easy to do because it's not something that I go out of my way to do. It just happens, like just from what I'm doing. A lot of us are busy with work, with so many other things we've got. And to be honest, like it's something that you can just take 10, 15 minutes to do and allow yourself to give yourself that time to read to your child, that storytelling and reading to them every night. Like, alhamdulillah, I try to read to my child, and I've been reading to her from such a young age that even her teachers were saying like she's very into her books. She loves her books, mashallah. So those things really, really have helped. And yes, and now the other thing that I am doing is also advice that was given from Brother Iqbal actually about getting the child to recite in Arabic and then say it in English as well. And alhamdulillah, I've been using learning routes to help my child do that. And we're working on each line at a time. So once she's learned one line, I'll move on to the next line. So alhamdulillah, those are the things that I've done and tested, and they've worked. And my final thing is basically you're in charge here. You are the parent. Ask yourself what does Allah want from you, and what is it that you're doing to ensure that you are instilling that spirituality in your child from a young age. So yeah, and I hope those points helped. So Jazakallah khair for that.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Naheedah. So I haven't put this question in the chat yet, but what are some of your key takeaways that you've taken from Sister Naheedah's talk? And please do post them in the chat, because it helps all of us as a reminder, but it also helps people that may have joined the talk halfway through or missed the beginning section. So Jazakallah khair. So we have Benish Mirza. So great surname, mashallah. So great to see a female speaker leading these conversations. Sister Rizwana has summarized this beautifully. So prepare mentally, reduce your own screen time, play the recitation of the Quran at night where your child is sleeping, use different forms of entertainment, especially during meal times, and limit the screen time during those times, and perhaps at breakfast, play the morning adhkar. There's a beautiful, video by Omar Hisham that's available, that he goes through the morning adhkar. It's 23 minutes. It's a beautiful video, having conversations around Allah and listening to those surahs as well. Sister Sonia said, children like to learn through fun, and in order for your child to listen to you, you need to build that bond of trust and love with them. And becoming friends with them. We also have fantastic summaries. We might be able to write a whole book just on all of the comments on Sister Naheedah's talk. Sister Salma or Salam saying, be active in your kid's life. I think it's a great motto. Sister Mira saying when she's cooking, she recites the surahs out loud, and her son managed to learn 8 surahs just from her reciting those surahs out loud, mashallah. And there's many other comments here as well. So we have lots of questions. So what I would like to do is I'd like to progress through the next 2 talks so that we can get straight to the Q&A, because I believe that's where there'll be a lot of value for each and every one of you during this session. Someone mentioned earlier on that their child was able to learn the Arabic alphabet and numbers by the age of 2. So might need some of your tips because my son's trying to currently learn the Arabic numbers, and he gets up to 4, but when it gets to number 5, it looks like a 0, doesn't it? So when it comes to Khamsa, he's like 0, and I'm like, no, that's number 5. And he gets very confused at that point in time. So, but jazakallah khair to all of you for your comments and summary of Sister Naheedah's talk. So I want to move on to the third speaker that we have for this evening or afternoon or morning for you, which is I would say Ustad Iqbal Nasim. Other people say brother Iqbal Nasim. Iqbal is an educator at heart. He was the former chief exec, or kind of transitioning from chief exec of the National Zakat Foundation, and also the founder of one of the most popular online prayer programs called Transform My Prayer. He's memorized the Quran. He learned Arabic from a young age, with several teachers, and also has a strong chain of narration, a chain of Quran recitation that goes back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So we're very honored to have Iqbal. He's a dear friend, dear brother. I'm just going to put the spotlight on him just now so you can all see him. And without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to Iqbal Nasim, who's going to talk about how to make prayer a natural experience for your children.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. I begin in the name of Allah, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. All praise belongs to Allah, Lord of all that exists. Blessings and peace upon the master of the messengers Muhammad, his family and followers, and all his companions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah be upon you all. Thank you, Shabazz, for the introduction, and thanks for organizing this great event. MashaAllah, it's amazing to see so many hundreds of you here watching and learning and benefiting. And thanks also to the other speakers for participating. And I learned a lot from what I've listened to so far. I learned a lot also about from Sister Naheedah about what I should say. She gave me a reminder about what I should say, because she actually basically stole my thunder to a little degree, because if you tell the audience what I told you a long time ago and what I'm about to, and then I'm about to say the same thing, then that's fine. That's good, mashallah. And it was really nice to hear from you that, because obviously we haven't spoken for a little while, so it's nice to hear from you that you implemented something that I mentioned, and then and how that's working for you. So I am once upon a time, someone told me that if you want to make a talk memorable, then you should boil everything down to 3 key points. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to boil it down to 3 key points, and some of them will echo what has been mentioned already, but nonetheless, they are what I think are the absolute 3 key points in order to make the prayer a natural experience for your children, but frankly, a natural experience for yourself too. Okay, because actually we often find that many Muslim adults are not actually far ahead of where many children are in terms of their experience of the salah. So the actual, what I'm going to be speaking about, whilst you're perhaps, I imagine the vast majority of you here are in the context, obviously, of being parents and or either now or hoping to be parents, inshallah, in the future. Think about how these things, which I will talk about, apply to you yourself. So the very first principle, which has already been discussed a little bit already, and is a critical one, is very simple. Allah first, salah second. Okay, Allah first, salah second. Now, many times when we as parents engage with our children, we talk to them about often, Islam, things that they need to do. We talk about perhaps the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talk about various obligations, ways to be, characteristics. And oftentimes we ourselves fail to make Allah a natural part of our own engagement, our own sentences, the way we engage with our children. And the reason for that will often be that our own understanding, engagement, the nature of the relationship that we have with our Lord, ourselves, perhaps is slightly skewed. And therefore, we don't comfortably and naturally bring Allah into the conversation, into normal conversations that we have with each other. And therefore, we actually find it difficult to do that for our children, or we don't even think about doing it in that natural kind of way. Our children will never be able to pray consistently and regularly. And of course, that's something which is a priority for all of us. Like one of the almost signs that we ourselves will look out for in order to think about whether we are being successful parents is whether our children are consistent in their prayers. Reflecting or echoing the Abrahamic supplication in the Quran, Rabbi ja'alni muqima as-salah wa min dhurriyyati. Ibrahim alayhi salam, peace be upon him, had a concern for the fact that my Lord, make me keep up the prayer and my children too, future generations, and those to come. So we have this multi-generational concern for the upholding of salah. But our children will never be able to uphold their prayer if they don't have a rock solid relationship with their Lord. Now, obviously that sounds really obvious. That sounds an obvious statement, but oftentimes we miss that in the way in which we speak to our children about salah. And if we are disproportionately talking to them about salah and doing salah without mentioning or referring to or talking about Allah in such a way that will normalize their connection, their relationship with their Lord, then you can forget about them being consistent in their prayers, or certainly as a result of your or our efforts. It's very, very important. And it's already been touched on, so I'm not going to labor it too much more, but it's just some examples, okay, that of bringing Allah naturally into the conversation. That when you sit to eat, for example, together as a family, then rather than only, oftentimes what we'll do when it comes to moments or events where we know that there are, for example, certain prophetic supplications, we may, for example, say, oh, did everyone say their dua? Did everyone say Bismillah? And then people say, okay, Bismillah. And then for begin eating. Even in saying Bismillah, now we as parents take satisfaction when our children say the Arabic version of a supplication or a dua at an appropriate time. And that's a good thing, no doubt. But do not underestimate the extent to which when they say Bismillah, because you said, did everyone say Bismillah before we begin, you remind them that they don't actually process what they just did. They don't actually think about what exactly just happened. So you need to really bring it into a kind of natural conversation. So for example, rather than, oh, did you make dua? Did you say the dua? And then, you know, give the Arabic prompt and then they come out with the Arabic and then that's it. Everyone feels happy and satisfied. That's okay. It's not great though. It's not great. What you want to be doing is something, for example, like saying in plain English what it is that you actually mean in terms of what you're hoping that they will do. Do you think, or did you remember to, did you remember or did it occur to you to take Allah's name before you begin eating? Now that's a different way of putting it. It's very similar, but it is different. If you say to your child, did you remember to say Bismillah? That's very different in its effect from if you say to your child, did you remember to take Allah's name before eating? Okay, and then it's because then it's like, well, what, or remember his name, recollect his name, mention his name. And why would you do that? Because to incur blessings, to be grateful, etc. During the meal, okay, you could observe, right? Isn't it so amazing how Allah has brought this food for us together and that we are eating now? Okay, and afterwards, oh, instead of did you say Alhamdulillah, literally say to them, if they have forgotten, yeah, how shall we praise Allah now, or how shall we thank him now? So that in plain English, they're understanding what it is they're actually doing. The problem with when we talk about making dua and doing dua is that even that language is slightly artificial or can cause a disconnect to in terms of the person's mind, the child's mind, even our own minds, about what exactly it is that we're doing. We're actually offering some sort of communication and remembrance. So Allah first, Salah second, basically says, connect your child to his or her Lord in a natural way by reminding them of who Allah is in the context of day-to-day situations. And ultimately, you'll be doing that for your child, mostly in the context of reminding them that Allah loves them, reminding them that Allah invites them to be with him, reminding them about Allah's favors upon them, reminding them about how amazing Allah is, right? So as was mentioned earlier, you know, some observation of the natural phenomena around us, not to get the child to, not to allow the child to observe these natural phenomena, except that they relate it back to Allah. And one last thing I just want to mention here quickly on this point is the fact that oftentimes, for most of our children who are just going to, normal schools where they aren't necessarily being taught in the context of a faith-based framework or a God-centered framework, let's say, one thing that our children miss, and one thing that most parents never make the connection for their children to, is the fact that when they're studying science, history, even language, whatever they're studying, that all of these things are parts and parcel of them appreciating this created world and Allah's mastery, his wisdom, his creativity, his whatever, different qualities. Yeah. And so when the child brings home the homework, right, and you're doing homework with a child or whatever the activity is that in the context of their school life, actually make the connection in the context of that too. So that when they themselves are in their classroom, right, they're also thinking about it. They're observing and thinking about the things that they're doing in the classroom, through that particular lens, which might be different, of course, than how others may do so. Don't speak to your child as if the faith, the religion, the deen, Islam, Allah is only about in the home, but not anywhere else. You have to equip them to be able to, when they're away from you, if for most of us who they'll be away at school, that they have that capability too. So that's the first thing. The second thing is be creative in explaining and inviting to prayer. So now that the child knows that life is about building and maintaining, preserving this relationship with their Lord, and then salah is the main way to demonstrate that, then we need to be creative in the way that we're explaining salah and inviting them to salah. So when you explain salah, explain in the context of what it actually is. And this again comes down to how naturally we think about it ourselves. If we just see it as a ritual, an obligation, a tick box exercise, something that we have to do, but we don't really want to do, etc., then we will communicate to our children with the same boredom, if you like, or in as uninspiring a way as we ourselves are bored and uninspired by our own prayer, in truth, you see. So we need to basically think about for ourselves what it is really, and then be able to relate to our children in that way. So you explain your salah to your child in the context of it being this meeting, an interaction, a special occasion, an opportunity to speak to and to share things with their Lord. That's what it is. That's what it is. Allah has given us an opportunity to be with him in a formal environment, a formal meeting which has its specific protocol, if you like. Yeah, you have to be in certain positions, certain movements, offer certain words, etc. You have to do these things. Or explain it to your child in that context. So that's in terms of what the prayer is. And obviously we'll keep it brief because of time. But then when you're inviting them to the prayer, right? We might say, depending on, on our different cultures, languages, and what's going on at home, we'll just say, okay, come on, everyone, let's do namaz. All right, everyone, are you ready for salah? Okay, let's do salah. Let's just do namaz, let's do salah. Come on, everyone, let's do, right? And without, again, it's okay, but it's not great. It's not great. It's okay, but it's not great. What would make it much better is that, for example, again, to invite them to the salah in a way that aligns with the natural explanation for salah, which is, okay, everybody, do you think it's a good time now? Shall we stand in front of Allah, meet with him, just talk with him for a little while? We haven't mentioned the word salah, but you've told them what actually it is. It's about to happen. So they process it in that way. Otherwise, it just becomes this thing that my parent is, over time, increasingly annoyingly just telling me to do without really having told me what it's really about. And without basically inviting or encouraging me towards it in a way that I might find inspiring and that brings about some sort of actual connection. So let's go and speak with Allah. So for example, sometimes with my own children, I have 4 children, alhamdulillah. The oldest are 7 and 8 years old. So with them at this age, what I will do, I might go one step back. I will even say to them, we're coming home from school, for example, I'll say to them, okay, what was the best thing that happened in school today? Okay, so they'll tell me what the best thing that happened in school today. One of them usually needs a bit of, you have to draw it out of her, it's like taking blood from a stone, to be honest. But anyway, you get it out eventually. Something good did happen. So you identify what this good thing was. And then the conversation moves to trying to connect that to gratitude. Okay, alhamdulillah, that's really amazing. Did you thank Allah? Do you praise him for that? That's the second point. And then, do you think when we get home, is a good idea for us to, just stand in front of Allah for a few minutes to thank him, etc., and to remember him? That's it. The word salah didn't come up necessarily yet, but they've gone on an arc of thinking from the thing that they experienced to a feeling of gratitude to thinking that, yeah, it's kind of reasonable that I will want to now demonstrate that gratitude. Okay. This is basically the kind of the journey that often we as adults need to go on when we ourselves feel a certain resistance or friction towards prayer. Remind yourself about something that is a blessing in your life. That's often a major prompt or a motivator. And then we realize actually to stand in front of Allah just for a few minutes to thank him for the last few hours of all the blessings that we have is actually nothing. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable. Yeah, of course. Okay. So be creative. So just when you're in a rush, you're at home, stressed, there's all sorts of stuff going on. It's like this, you rush your invitation to prayer and it becomes a boring kind of invitation, let's say. Remind people about salah in that household based on what it actually is, which is this meeting, communication, or an opportunity, a blessing, an engagement. Finally, again, and this is the point that Sister Naheedah mentioned, so I'll keep it brief, and the point speaks for itself. You have to explore the journey together, the actual journey. I don't want to say process, but right, of prayer, because it makes it sound like a mechanical process. But the journey of prayer, you have to explore it with your child bit by bit in a way that unlocks the meaning. Because, and as was mentioned by Sister Naheedah in the previous talk, and which is one thing I had mentioned to her, and I mentioned to everybody really, I mentioned to adults as well, is the fact that, look, we know as adults that there's so many things that we say in our prayer, either we don't understand the meanings of the words, or even if we do understand the meanings of the words, whilst we're saying the words, we're not thinking about the meanings of the words. So then by definition, it's going to become a mindless process. By definition, you cannot express these words from your heart because you don't even know them in your head, or if you know them in your head, you're like not taking the effort to just communicate in an appropriate manner. So this is why, actually yesterday, I was at the Islam Channel studios yesterday, and we spent, one of the things that we were doing there, we were recording some materials together because we've been, alhamdulillah, working together to try and get more of the material around Salah, especially, out there to more people. And so one of the things that I did is we recorded together with the team there an end-to-end demonstration of Salah, alternating the Arabic and English phrases throughout the whole prayer. Right, a 2-unit prayer from beginning to end, alternating the Arabic and English phrases, so that a person can really get a feel for what is actually being said here. And when you hear the whole thing through in Arabic and English together, even for an adult who's been praying for many years, I guarantee you, when you observe that, like, it will change your perspective on the Salah. It will definitely do that. For your child, then, that is an absolutely, and frankly, possibly for most of us who are here as well, this is a very, very helpful way for you to practice unlocking the meaning of prayer and being able to express yourself in a meaningful way. So you literally will do something like this, right? In the demonstration there, I did English first, then Arabic, and there's an important reason for that. But just for argument's sake, let's just do that, in fact, right? So this is how you yourself can practice, and you can practice with your child, right? So number 1, God is the greatest. Allahu Akbar. So now I'm clear, I'm linking, God is the greatest, Allahu Akbar. You and I both, we all know, I say both, you're receiving me as an individual, but all of us know here, right? When we say Allahu Akbar to transition from in different positions of the prayer, most of the time when we say Allahu Akbar, we are not connecting to us proclaiming Allah's greatness. It just becomes a symbol of, okay, I need to move, I need to move, I need to move. But are we really saying that God is the greatest? Like as if we really mean it. And then the next part, right? The Subhanak Allahumma bihamdik. Allah, you are so perfect. Yours is the praise. Wa tabarak asmuk. How blessed is your name. Wa ta'ala jadduk. How lofty is your status. Wa la ilaha ghayruk. There is no God other than you. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I take refuge in Allah from the rejected devil, the Satan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy, etc., etc., etc. Until you get to at-tahiyyatu lillah wa salawatu tayyibat. Compliments, greetings to God, and prayers, and all pure and good actions. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you, Prophet, and the mercy and blessings of Allah, etc., etc., etc. Now, you can see, obviously, alhamdulillah, I'm doing it in a way that's fluent. The Arabic is fluent, the English is fluent. The Arabic is fluent, the English is fluent. You can all do that. Your children can definitely do that, right? They just memorize picking up things at an astonishing pace. It's extremely important that we are able to do this. If you and your child cannot give the meanings of your prayers in as fluent and as simple and as easy way, just render those meanings, say the meanings from beginning to end as comfortably as you say the Arabic, you will never be able to express yourself meaningfully in the prayer. By definition, this is not like some sort of like, it's profound at one level, but it's a very simple observation. But many of us fail in this observation. And many of us do not actually do this for ourselves, let alone our children. And you will only be able to do it for your children to the extent that you understand how important it is for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to summarize. I appreciate I've gone on, and usually that's my problem. I just talk and talk forever. Right? 3 points. Number 1, Allah first, Salah second. Be gentle in introducing the Salah to your child. Prioritize Allah. Prioritize talking about him, connecting, etc. in a real way, not in an artificial way, in a real way. You just apply normal relationship and communication principles, right, to Allah and then to Salah. Second, be creative in how you explain and invite to prayer. Okay, using words in the language that they're normally used to. Very, very important. Very important, because oftentimes, remember, they're processing their normal life in the English language. And it's good for them to study Arabic and learn Arabic, no doubt. I mean, I've done that from a young age. I would hope my children to do that, etc. But they need to be able to understand everything that they're doing for their Lord. Also, they need to understand in plain English too. If they don't, there's going to be this break in their mind. There's this linguistic and cognitive space for everything to do with their faith, and then there's another space for everything else. That break, if it stays with them over time, effectively becomes like a crack, which is very difficult to heal over and make themselves one. And finally, as I've said, explore the journey together to unlock the meanings of the prayers, so that they can learn to express themselves from their heart and not just like mumble through the phrases, but actually mean what they say. So may Allah bless us all, and may He enable us to offer our prayers in a high quality fashion, in a consistent fashion, and through our example to our children, and also through an appropriate manner of teaching and a patient approach to help our children also become consistent, persistent, and passionate about their salah. May Allah bless you all, and thanks again for the opportunity.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. I love the end, the consistent and persistent. I love that, the phrases there and the alliteration or the rhyming. That we have a fantastic summary of your talk by Zainab Saliani, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is, as you mentioned, Iqbal, Allah first and Salah second. Making Allah part of our daily engagements. Number 2 is be creative when explaining and inviting your child to the prayer. Don't make it a routine, but explain it as a meeting with their Lord and an opportunity to be with Allah. And point number 3, as you said, Iqbal, exploring the journey of Salah together. And going through that as an experience. And subhanAllah, we've got another very long review and summary as well by Sister Amara. So Jazakallah khair for that too. I'm going to try and export the chat at the end. Actually, I think it's something I can do is Zoom and put together the notes for everyone and send them to everyone at the end of the session as well. Now, just before Brother Iqbal sort of kind of, I guess, he tackles a Q&A at the end. Brother Iqbal, as some of you are actually already aware, has a very popular and transformational prayer program called Transform My Prayer, which is currently it's currently open for registrations. And this is something that he's been teaching, probably indirectly for many, many years, but directly through the Transform My Prayer program over the past few years. And so some of you have already taken this program, mashallah, as I can see in the comments. But if you haven't, what I have done is I've just popped a link to Iqbal's Transform My Prayer course in the chat box just now. And if you would like to register, if you would like to, we already got a comment from Sister Zainab, TMP is the best program by far, mashallah. If you'd like to be a part of that, register for it and, use the month that we have upon us, the month of Ramadan, to improve and transform this, exercise, this activity that we do 5 times a day. Think of the compound effect if you're able to just make that experience 1 degree, 1% better, and think about how much you will achieve by the end of the year. So again, we'll send out the link to all the participants of the session after, and inshallah, we'll be able to you get direct access to the registration link for that course. So jazakallah khair again, Iqbal. We'll come back to the Q&A. Okay, last but certainly not least, we have an amazing man, and I just say that an amazing man, Brother Kamal, who's the founder of MySalahMat. And honestly, I have to say, before MySalahMat, I can't think of what we were doing, what tools we were using to inspire the love of Salah within our children in a very practical way. I can't think of a person that doesn't use the MySalahMat to help their kids learn the prayer. And you only need to follow Kamal's MySalahMat on Instagram or TikTok, just to see, the power that one tool, one product can have on a child's life. If you think about the iPhone or the Fitbit, or many other things, the air fryer, you know, as a product, how has it revolutionized our day to day? You can see the power of having the right tool at the right time for the right person to inspire the right change that they see and that they need in their life. And so without further ado, I'd like to pass on to Brother Kamal, who can introduce himself, but also speak about how to inspire the love of Salah within your children. Over to you, Kamal. There you go.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Oh my God, mashallah, how can I lead from what we just heard from all three participants? Alhamdulillah, I'm so inspired right now. Honestly, like I'm like geared up to go and do some of these things, some of these examples that we've been given with my own children. Honestly, I'm so happy to be part of this. Thank you, Shabazz, for inviting me to talk. I'm coming from a very real perspective. I have two children of my own. Alhamdulillah. I am, not many people know, but I've been a teacher for the last decade. You know, about 10 years I've been teaching children, mainly teenagers, but I have taught in primary school. And my kids were a very big lesson for me as well. They taught me a lot. And I come from that perspective. And I am a product designer. And when I was designing the MySalahMat, there was a lot of things that I had to think about. It was really deep. And I would love to share some of this with you guys, because it wasn't just about producing this, this prayer mat that the kids could use and learn Salah. Of course, alhamdulillah, it does that. But my vision behind it was how can this inspire the love of Salah? And I always come from that perspective of love, because I think love is such a powerful tool that it will make you get up 5 o'clock in the morning to pray Fajr, because you only do it because you love to connect with Allah, right? Because at that time of the morning, you want to everybody just wants to sleep. You know, these days I'm waking up and sometimes I can't even go back to sleep. So my day starts at 5 o'clock in the morning and it ends like at 12 o'clock at night. So, you know, sometimes you have to, you know, in order for ourselves as adults, you know, we need to fall in love with something in order to keep doing it and want to do it. And that's been my whole kind of perspective with developing the MySalahMat, with teaching my children. I want them to love what they're doing, not just Salah, reading Quran, you know, to love Allah, to love the prophets, to, you know, to want to engage. And when I say I come from this very real perspective, so there are 4 key points I want to see if I can cram into this. First point would be play with your children. Second point would be teach your children. Third will be lead by example. We are all examples for our children. And fourth, practice with guidance. And I'll explain a little bit about that. So when I say I come from a very real perspective, teaching teenagers and teaching younger kids, you know, everybody, you know, all the kids, our kids go to kind of normal standard, you know, state schools, and, you know, everybody, all the kids are playing computer games and they're watching TV, and they know who their favorite YouTuber is, and they can probably tell us a whole life story about their favorite YouTuber. And this is what we're dealing with. So we're dealing with this right now. So we're in this environment where, you know, they're watching TV or they're watching YouTube and they're playing games. And now Salah time comes, right? And how are you going to inspire them to want to now leave all of this and go and pray Salah? And that's the challenge, right? And, you know, it all comes from instilling the love of Allah, the love of Salah, the whole environment around that you create around Salah. All comes down to all of these points. How you deal with that from a young age will then mean when they're like teenagers, that when it's Salah time, it's like, oh, it's Salah time, that they just go and do it, right? And what we've done with our children from a young age, we've made it into a whole kind of like event almost. So it's like, you know, alhamdulillah, my sister went on holiday and she bought this massive rug, and it wasn't like thick enough as a rug, but it was really perfect to pray on. It was one of those really big ones. And what we do is we get that out. The whole, you know, my daughter, my children, all my son will both of them will get that out. They've got their own kind of prayer mats as well. My daughter has her scarf that she loves putting on at that time. And it's a whole event, you know. My son will go into wudu, my daughter, and then we all then, you know, and over time, over kind of like, and that's kind of where I go on to kind of teaching. But I'll come on to that a little bit. But my son does the adhan, and then we will, you know, we'll lead the prayer, and after the prayer we'll make dua together, and it's a whole event. It's a whole process, and it's beautiful, and they love it. They absolutely love getting involved in that. And you know, prayer has become much more than just you know, much more to them just through that one process. You know, we will talk about, like Sister Naheedah has said, you know, we're constantly talking about, you know, why are we praying? You know, if we want anything, we should ask Allah. Allah will give us anything that we want. Constantly trying to bring Islam into any little question, any little thing that they say, that they ask us. It's a really, really, you know, if you don't start from a younger age, and all of a sudden they're teenagers and you're like, okay, let's go and pray, you know, it's going to be really difficult. And I'm not saying that it's not possible. Of course it is. But you have to make it into that whole event that, you know, this is special, this is precious, you know, and we should want to do this. And over time, you know, you slowly build that love of wanting to pray, and it can only lead to greater things, inshallah. So like the second point I was going to say was teach your children. So one of the ways that, you know, and it's one of the reasons why I invented the MySalahMat, was that it's little bits, you know, over a long period of time. You know, one of the things that I'm constantly telling parents is that, yes, the MySalahMat will teach your children, but it won't teach your children in the next 24 hours or in the next week or in the next month. You have to constantly use it for 5 minutes every day, get them to learn the positions, get them to initially get them to do wudu, get them to you know, face the Qibla, get them to understand what adhan is. Like Brother Iqbal says, Salah is a whole journey, and a whole journey that you take them through. And each part of the journey is special. Each part of the journey is spiritual. And within each part of the journey, you reinforce or you educate and you teach them these things, how to do wudu, but why we do wudu, why we purify ourselves, you know, that we're standing in front of Allah. We're going to be standing in front of our Lord who has created us. And that in itself, like if you think about it as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, that concept, you know, of Allah is, even for adults, it's, you know, it can be quite difficult, quite, you know, quite hard to kind of put your head around. But you need to, you know, we need to understand that kids are going to school, and they're learning from books, they're learning from interactive tools, they're playing games. You know, maths comes along and it's not learning maths, it's about, you know, they're getting the coins out. The alphabet comes along and they're not learning the alphabet, they're singing a song. So they're doing all of these interactive things in school, and they come home and or they go to the masjid and they're expected to sit and learn a foreign language and to keep memorizing it and not know why and not connect. You know, what's going to happen, right? What's going to happen? They're not going to be interested. They might memorize surahs, but are they going to then practice those surahs? They might memorize how to do salah, but are they going to then go and pray salah? They might memorize the Quran, but are they really going to then read the Quran as they get older? These are real, like, strong, deep questions that we all have to kind of ask ourselves, and put in place something in the home that invites them to salah, invites them to read the Quran, invites them to want to connect with Allah, invites them to ask the questions, those deep questions, those really hard questions that we find difficult ourselves. And I'm telling you, kids get it like that. My son Hamza has said so many profound things at the age of like 6 or 7. I'm like, wow, how did you get that? At one point, it was his birthday, and he just turns around and he says, when you get old, you can never get time back. And I was just like, what? Where did that come from? Where did you just? And it's these are things that that we can slowly try and embed within our children. Leading by example is probably the most important thing. If you don't pray, your kids are not going to pray. Let's face it. If you don't read Quran in front of them and they don't hear you reading Quran, they're not going to connect with the Quran. If you're not, if you're not talking about Allah with them, they're not going to talk about Allah. We are the role models that our children become. And there's a great responsibility. There's a great responsibility, and there are reasons why Allah has put, has given parents, so much, so many rights. Like, you can't say oof to your parents. There's a reason, because, we should, as long as we do our parts, what we should do, then those rights will come to us, inshallah. So, so leading by example, lead the prayer, give the adhan, show your children how to do wudu, say Bismillah Rahman Rahim and explain what that means and explain why we're saying it. Why do we say Alhamdulillah? And, say it often and let your children hear it. So like us being an example for our children is, for me, is really, really important. We set up that environment, we set up that event of praying together. So this is the parents, this is the role of the parents, and the children take over. I started putting the prayer mats out, now my children do it. I started doing the adhan, now my children do it. So I started leading the prayer, now my children do it. So it's amazing, honestly, the blessings and barakah Allah will put in that, that time, and the sacrifices that we make, and the time that we take to to spend that time with our children. You will see it in tenfolds. You will see it in unimaginable ways that Allah will bring that back to you, and hopefully, inshallah, raise pious children. The last point that I want to talk about is practice by guidance. And I too have gone through an experience where you can't lead the prayer because you don't know how to pray properly, or you can't give the adhan because your recitation isn't perfect. Well, if you don't practice it, if you don't do it, then how are you going to get any good at it? That's my philosophy. Within the school environment, kids are standing up on stage and they're giving presentations. They might not be perfect, but they do it from a young age, because as they keep doing it, they get better and they get better. Kids that ask questions, give out answers aloud, speak to the whole class. They're being put in these positions. So in the home environment, what we have done as parents is that we've said to our son, recite the adhan. Oh, I'm not sure. I don't know all of it properly. Okay, say it. When you get stuck, I'll guide you. And that's what I mean by practice with guidance. So I'll guide you. So he starts off saying the adhan. He gets stuck. No problem. This is a safe environment. Make as many mistakes as you like. Nobody's going to tell you off. Nobody. In fact, I'm going to praise you, and I'm going to praise you for keep trying. And I'm going to say, well done. And I'm going to reward you for that. And over time, he gets it. He can now confidently, alhamdulillah, recite the adhan. It's not perfect, but he can do it. The next stage for him would be to recite it even better and even better and even better. And the same with salah. We started off, Hassan Hamza by leading the salah, and he would make mistakes. Not a problem. Lead the salah. Feel how it, put that kind of like responsibility almost, but almost put them in a position where they feel like they're the leaders, and they're the future leaders. And I put them in that position. I put him in that position, and I know he's going to make a mistake, but I know that I've built enough confidence in him or enough trust in him to know that if he makes a mistake, nothing's going to happen. He's going to learn from it. He's going to practice. He's going to get better. And that's what's happened. He would then practice, and he would make a mistake. I would correct him. He would carry on. I would correct him. He would carry on. And over time, alhamdulillah, now he can lead the prayer. And if he can lead the prayer with 4 of us, inshallah, he can lead the prayer with more. I want to end by actually talking about the realities that we live in. The realities that we live in is that the kids go to a school that it's not a Muslim school. Majority of people, they're going to mix with kids who don't believe in God, kids who believe that Jesus is God, kids who other Muslims that they meet. They're going to meet teachers who don't practice, or teachers who do practice but practice Christianity. Or why do we do this? Why are we doing this? Why is this so important? Why is it important to instill the love of Salah and love of Islam? Why is it important for them to connect to Allah? Is that when they go to these environments, when they're there in these environments, whether that's school, whether they go to a sporting event, or whether they go to a shopping mall and they meet people from other faiths, is that they're confident, that they have enough understanding for them to hold their own ground and say, you believe what you believe, and I respect that, and I'm tolerant of that, but I have my faith too. And my vision for the MySalahMat has always been that from day one, it's always been that if we instill the love of Salah within children, even today, for example, today, right now, we have that many Muslims in the UK that if every single Muslim in the UK wanted to go to the masjid on a Friday, we don't have enough space, right? If every single Muslim child right now today wanted to pray in school, the school would have to make a space for them, and that would be a pretty big space. If the Muslims in workplaces, in schools or in hospitals or in their offices said that I need a prayer place, they would have to make a prayer place. My vision is that we can do this. We can raise a generation of Muslim kids who are that connected to Allah, that love Salah that much, that they don't want to miss it. They want to pray on time. So they ask the school, I want a prayer room. So they ask their business or their workplace, I need a prayer room. These institutions see people praying. They themselves will become more tolerant, because the more people that do it, the more normal and normalized it becomes. And within a generation, we would have to build more masjids. We'll have to have more prayer places. We would have to, schools would have to change. All of these different institutions would have to change so that the people can pray. When that happens, when we're connecting with Allah 5 times a day, putting our heads, prostrating, knowing that nothing is possible without the will of Allah, that's when we see generations change. That's when we see societies change. And that's when we see communities really come together, really work together. And inshallah, it's, forget Islamophobia. There will be no Islamophobia. Forget kind of intolerance. There will be no intolerance. When you raise people, when you raise children to listen to Allah, to listen to the Prophet ﷺ, to pray 5 times a day, we become peaceful, we become tranquil, and we become content, we become, harmonious with the communities around us, and we respect them and they respect us. And inshallah, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. It's quite, but alhamdulillah, I really, I really think, anything is possible with the will of Allah. Inshallah, may Allah protect us, guide us, protect our children, raise them, guide them on the path of those who are on the path of those Allah has blessed. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Brother Kamal. Very passionate, and I can see you leading the change and the charge, especially in the UK, on that. And I'm not sure if you saw this as well online, but there was a photo of I think it was high school or secondary school kids, and they organized to pray outside in the playground because their school hadn't given them a space, and eventually there was enough critical mass for the school to warrant to give them a space, and they led by that example. And I thought that was a really nice, beautiful example of what you've just spoken about, that was shared online. So what I'm going to do, for everyone still here, alhamdulillah, the kind of 358 people that are still with us, and thank you to all for staying around. So we're going to go through the Q&A, and we have a lot of questions. So a couple of housekeeping points. I'm going to go through as many of them as possible. Some of them I'm going to combine. For the speakers that we have, Sister Naheedah, Iqbal, Kamal, and Zaheer, I'll probably allocate the question to you, and if you can keep your answer as brief as possible, so we can get through as many questions as possible as well. Just going to go through this question by question, just for everyone's benefit. How would you best find the balance of building resilience in your child and not pushing them too hard? Zaheer, I'm going to give that one to you.
Sure, Jazakallah khair. So the question is, how would you find resilience in your child, and to ensure that you're not pushing them too far beyond what they can cope with? So this comes through experience. This comes, you've got enough experience that you have with your child that you'd realize in certain instances, where that happens. There'll be instances where you'll see a reaction that shows that they were pushed a bit beyond where they would be. And if you, for example, see any long-term remnants from that perhaps shows that was a particularly poignant type of experience that would have pushed them too far. But a lot of this comes from your judgment. And this is the real skill set that as parents or nurturers or teachers of our children that we need to really pay attention to. And so that's what I would say. It really just comes down to your experience. And it really comes back to the point that I mentioned at the end of my talk, that every child is different, every context is different, and sometimes only through experience do you actually learn that.
And next question, I'm going to stay with Zaheer on this one. What does Islam say on managing anger in children from a young age?
So that's a big question, alhamdulillah. But I mean, the general advice is the same as it is for adults. Yeah. So you teach as you would teach an adult. You teach the same thing for children. So you have, for example, the isti'adha, saying "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem." You get children to, and obviously, it happens all the time, even my children as well. You get them to go through the steps. Get them to do wudu. Yeah. Get them to sit down if they're standing up, and so on. So it's the same steps as it would be for adults, but this is a really wonderful time to kind of introduce the dynamics as well, and saying, look, this is like a feeling that's coming from shaitan, so we need to seek protection in Allah Azza wa Jal from shaitan, and so those teaching moments are there. And sometimes you'll notice that more often than not, actually, that children are far more open to that advice and open to that learning than even adults are.
Jazakallah khair. Next two questions are going to be for Sister Naheedah. So first one is, if you're exposing your child to certain activities, but they're just losing interest and they want to sit in front of a screen, perhaps they're a bit older, 9, 10, 11 years old, what advice would you give?
My advice for this would be, if they are losing interest, it's not engaging enough. It's usually they lose interest when they're bored and it's just not challenging them. So you've got to make that kind of sort of see that from afar and just see, well, what can I kind of do to make that a little bit more challenging for them? Sometimes when things are too easy for kids, they just give up and they'd rather move and do something that allows them to think and use logic. With older children as well, yeah, again, it just comes down to like 9-year-olds, 8-year-olds, give them something a bit more challenging. Ask them, they'll probably tell you it's too easy for them, and they will say it's easy. So yeah, that's my answer for that.
Yeah. And how do you introduce difficult concepts like sacrifice to your child, especially when we have Eid al-Adha, and we're sacrificing animals? How do you talk to your child about those terms and concepts in Islam?
Personally, with my child being quite young, I wouldn't use the word sacrifice just yet. Similar with things like hellfire and stuff, I would not use that just yet. I'll wait until they're at an age of understanding, probably 7, 8, and then explain those terms, because I think a lot of these things, when they're young, they don't really need to know that in detail. Just celebrate as Eid, and we can tell the story of Ismail, Ibrahim alayhi salam, tell these stories and stuff, but you don't really need to go into depth about talking about sacrifice, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. Next two questions for Iqbal. First one is, how do you keep your children excited with reading the Quran, especially when some of the verses are a bit difficult to explain when you're reading the sort of English translation of them?
Yeah, but the verses that might be more either difficult to explain or controversial, or seem like they're in the context of a very different sort of situation in society, are very much in the minority, to be honest. So you've got a good well over 6,000 verses to explore. So you focus on the 5 and something thousand that aren't going to necessarily bring up those kind of questions or issues. And obviously it depends on the ages that we're talking about, so it depends. So yeah, I think it's more for most kids at an early age, if you're getting them familiar with some of the key messages, for example, around the short surahs, as well as maybe other key themes that then relate to more directly their relationship with their Lord, the understanding of who Allah is, let's say more Makkan kind of content, let's say, then that's, well, just as it was for all of the believers, right? That was the starting point. So obviously it makes sense that for our children, that would also be the starting point.
Next question for you is, at what point should we be teaching our child to pray? At what age is it obligatory for them to perform the prayer? And at what point should we start teaching them the prayer?
In terms of teaching, I would say it starts really just naturally, organically from an early age. I mean, my 2-year-old, she's already learning, but not because we're saying anything about it particularly, but just because she's observing and then doing the funny style of sujood that they do at 2 years old. So that's basically what it is. Intent from that side, I would say you just naturally start to involve them probably typically from the ages of 4, 5, 6. They will be in a state where they could actually start to stand alongside you. Obviously, it would depend. And then from that kind of age, really, I think from 5, 6 onwards, you certainly, in terms of the wordings of the prayer, knowing what they mean, understanding, memorizing, whatever, at a basic level, you can even start there. In terms of, and so then obviously it evolves, right? In terms of like formally speaking, when should they do it? There is a narration that's often quoted that's around sort of the age of 7 and 10. 7 from starting to, if you like, encouraging them to pray, and 10 to maybe, let's say, take it a bit more seriously. In terms of when it technically becomes obligatory, then most say, well, it's basically aligns with the age of puberty, which then is when the obligations come in necessarily. Most likely for most children in our kind of context there's likely to be something of a transition from the ages of the late single digits, so 8, 9, up until around, let's say, that early teens, 13, 14, 15. Because also what's happening, I'll just last thing here, just is in that period is that it's not just about getting them to pray, but getting them to pray, as was mentioned, like completely independently, you know. And so you go from that combined, collective, more dependent kind of prayer, if you like, to a much more independent state, probably transitioning in that period. So yeah.
And sticking with you, as there's one question directly for you, can you recommend a simple translation of the Salah?
Yeah, I mean, I've put one together. That's the one I know. So I'm sure others would be able to recommend. You know, mashallah, we have experienced educators and people who are much more maybe familiar with the kids kind of stuff than I am personally. But I have a document called "What to Say in Salah." It's a PDF document. I mean, I can share that with you, Shabazz, and you can share it with participants, registrants, perhaps afterwards, or I can share a link to it in the chat if you're okay with that.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, thank you.
No.
Next is a recommendation or an idea for Zaheer. So Sister Hale has said there's lots of great books out there for children, but nothing specifically for girls, for teenage girls. Is there a future project that you're thinking about in that space?
Yeah, so we've published the story of Khadija radiallahu anha, which has been really popular. And the idea of that story, authored by Sister Fatima Barakatullah, is it's really about showing the story in a flowing narrative. So think of it as like a crossover between our traditional narrations and literature that children of that age range would be exposed to. So, for example, your Harry Potters of the world and so on. And it's kind of that confluence between the two. So we're working. We've already produced that, alhamdulillah, and we are working on future titles as well. So I know that the story of Aisha radiallahu anha is also in the works as well. This is really a big, I say, responsibility upon our generation, that we do this work of making things relevant to our children. We have, for example, narrations that are wonderful in their preservation, and really it's about us now making that something that a child can relate to at that age. That work is something that's really required, and the Khadija book is the first sort of installment, if you like, from Learning Roots that we've started, and something we're keen to continue with, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, that's incredible. Questions for you, Kamal. Kamal, I think what's really pertinent about your experience is you're being a teacher at a decade, especially for the young teenager, group. And there's a lot of questions that I have on teenagers. So I'm going to do a rapid fire with you just now. So first one is, how can you encourage teenagers to pray whilst they're at school?
It really depends. I mean, I've been in schools where there's been a big Muslim community, and they will hold prayers, every lunchtime, and they will hold Jummah prayers on a Friday. And alhamdulillah, I've been fortunate to be in a school like that, and I was able to participate. And I've been in school where these facilities don't happen. Now, are you referring to, say, a facility where there's no prayer facility?
Where there's no prayer facility and there's perhaps a large non-Muslim community.
Yeah. So right now, actually, which is really amazing. My son wants to pray in school, right? And so we're in that process right now. And what we are doing is we're speaking with our children, and that they want to pray and they're happy to pray. And we are going to then speak with the classroom teacher, and if we need to, the head teacher, to facilitate a space for them where they can pray. Where there's no wudu facility, they can do tayammum, while the school gets used to them praying, especially with Ramadan coming up. One of the things I've personally realized, and I live in a small town where there's lots of non-Muslims, and we don't have a massive Muslim population. One of the things I've realized is that if you speak to them, and if you explain to them, and if you tell them about what you wish to do, and tell them the Ramadan is coming up, it's honestly like Ramadan just changes everything for them. And I think it is because there's so much blessing in the month of Ramadan that it even has an impact on people who are not Muslim, that they themselves will be like, oh, okay, Ramadan, you want to pray? Yeah, no problem. And give them that space and then just continue that space afterwards.
Next one for you is, we have a few reverts on the call, and they perhaps haven't fully learned the prayer themselves, and their children are being brought up in, I guess, families where there's Muslim and non-Muslim, and the children perhaps have been brought up in a non-Muslim environment for many years, and now it's about learning the prayer, and they're in that young teenager age. And I know that there are many different, communities of Muslims that use the MySalahMat. So from your own personal experience, from the customers that you have, what advice would you give to this person?
How to start praying?
To almost like, they're at a young teenager age, like 9, 10, 11, but they're not been exposed to the prayer at all before that.
There's so many resources out there, right? And if the parents are not able to kind of pass that information on and things like that, and the parents are learning themselves, right? That's what you're saying. The parents are learning themselves, and the kids are learning. I mean, like, for example, let's take what Learning Roots have got, and they've got the Kitab pen, right? So what I would personally do is, and I do this with my children anyway, is sit down with them and go through, say, the surahs or the Arabic alphabet, use the Kitab pen, and the Kitab pen will say the surahs, and then you can get them to say it after you hear the Kitab pen say it, and then you yourself can say it. So it could become a really quite a special thing. I would honestly look at the positive side to this. Imagine you as the father and the mother are learning the surahs with the child, and you're all learning at the same time. Obviously, the adults are going to learn it a lot faster, possibly, than the children. It depends what age the children are, but children do pick up things really, really fast. But it's such a special moment, and I think you should make that into an event, and you should make that like every Wednesday at 5 till 7 o'clock, we're going to do this, and we're going to sit down, and we're going to learn the Quran, and we're going to learn Salah. It becomes an event, it becomes a routine for the kids, and they look forward to it. Afterwards, have some snacks, and maybe a treat for them. So it's a whole thing that they're looking forward to. And you as the parents have also spent that time learning and practicing and getting things together. I would honestly look at it as take it as a very positive thing, and see it as a very spiritual connection with you and parents and kids with Allah at the same time. And I think there's something special that will come out of that for sure.
Next two questions for Sister Naheedah. First one is, do you implement any food restrictions with your child? For example, avoiding processed foods and sugars. The first question to you.
Yes, so from a young age, I introduced a lot of healthy foods to her. At the moment now, obviously she does want sweets and stuff, but I do restrict it to how much she can have, because it has a huge effect on their development, on their behavior. The sugar is, when they do play up and everything, sugar plays a big part in that. So I do avoid processed foods and stuff. So wherever possible, I give her healthy food. However, I don't restrict the sweets and stuff. I do allow it, but moderately. But I prefer to give her more nuts and dried fruits and stuff. So I encourage that more.
And the second question is, what is your thoughts on sort of these full-time Islamic schools and madrasas versus a more sort of a mainstream school that's slightly more academically kind of rigorous and better performing?
It's a good question. I'm still trying to figure out that one myself. Alhamdulillah, I've had the opportunity to work in both, and both schools have pros and cons. And sometimes it's hard to even find Islamic schools that are free. The mainstream schools are more state funded. So there's lots of pros and cons about it. Both have their benefits. Usually with the children who go to mainstream schools, a lot of the children have Saturday weekend schools where they're learning Islamic things. And with the Islamic schools as well, like one of the things that I found was that if they're engaging with the society as well, then that's a good thing. But when they're sort of secluded from society, sometimes they don't know how to speak to like non-Muslims and things. So I would really say you go with what you think is best for your child, because only you would know where your child is with their studies and how they are. So that's my answer to that.
Next question for Captain Zaheer. What would you prioritize first for your children? Is it, reading Quran? Is it learning Arabic? Is it memorizing certain du'as? Where do you start? And I'm asking you this question because I know you sort of have different age categories for your products, and you've thought of this, learning journey for children's, but what do you prioritize first and when?
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. It actually goes back to what Iqbal was saying. Allah Azza wa Jal first and foremost. If a child can understand the azama, the grandness of Allah Azza wa Jal, then everything else follows. If they understand how great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, if they understand His power, if they understand His mercy, His love, His care, then everything else becomes easy and natural. So that is the number one principle that we return back to. Even when salah becomes difficult, what do you return back to? It's about who are you praying to? When you make dua, who are you making dua to? It all returns back to Allah. So the first and foremost pillar, if you like, in raising a child is connecting them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the same pillar that you return back to every time you introduce a new act of worship or anything else.
Thank you. Okay, next question. So there's a few left. I'm trying to pick the sort of the kind of best ones, and actually a lot of these questions are in relation to other members of a household that might not be encouraging the child themselves. They might use derogatory words. Even in my households, family households, as loving and as incredible as mashallah, as all my different family members are, they're all different in personality. They're all different in how they talk and what they say. And I think as sometimes, as parents, we get very protective of our children going to different, family members' houses and what they might pick up, or, the grandmother might, be putting the kid down, etc. So I guess, Naheedah, if you were able to tackle this one, how do we deal with that situation where we're worried about our child being exposed to a certain person or a certain environment that might be conducive to how we personally want to bring up our child?
With this one, I would say just don't be afraid and just have that conversation with that person in a very nice, caring way. Don't make it like an attack on them. Just simply, look, I'm sure you want I'm sure they want what's best for your child anyway, and just simply just say, if we can maybe not use these words, because my child's like picking up on it, and we don't want them to speak like that. So just gently approaching it that way. And obviously, depending on how old your child is, if it gets to a point where like the other person's not cooperating, you can still have that conversation with your child. And like, there are sometimes you come across people who are not perfect. We're humans, we're not perfect. And this is why we relate it back to the ways of the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the character we follow, and bring it back to who our role models are, and the people around us will make mistakes and will do things that we shouldn't follow. So having those conversations.
I've had this question a number of times, and this is open to all panelists because I'm not sure if who would be best equipped to speak about this, but the question is, how do you teach the prayer to a child or teenager that may have a special ability such as autism, Down syndrome, or ADHD?
This one's hard.
I have an example. I don't know how, but there's a parent who recently shared a video of her son using the MySalahMat, and I thought it was so touching and it was so amazing, because she was the best parent for me, because she didn't pressure her child to do anything in this regard, right? And he had real Down syndrome, and it was a more extensive version of Down syndrome, and she said, and that over time he would slowly use it, and then he would slowly use it again, and he would always wanted to participate when he was seeing his grandmother and his mother pray. And what the SalahMat did for him was it just gave him that space to pray. And I'm just visualizing the video that I saw, and for him, or for the mother as well, just him doing sujood was a success. And I think we live in this society where everything's a competition. How fast can we, memorize the Quran, or how at what age did our children start praying? And it all becomes this like competition. And I honestly think you need to step back and you need to really just let your children go at their own pace, and be that guidance for them. And obviously not like let them, like if they have the ability to pray, and or if they have the ability to learn, and not just like let them not learn it. But if they're struggling, kind of like it's okay that they don't, one of the days they don't feel like praying. It's okay. All right, you don't feel like praying, something's happened, something say emotional or something. For me as a parent, and I'm not saying everyone should do this, but for me as a parent, I would just say, that's okay, right? You don't want to join in prayer, that's okay, and I'm not going to force that on them. But I'm going to let them watch me pray, and I'm going to let them be there in that room. And after I pray, I'm going to speak with them. I'm going to talk to them. What, are you okay? What's wrong? And it's always usually my daughter, because she's very emotional, and then she's okay. And the next day she will join me, and she will want to be part of that process. So I would just say with anybody who have children of different abilities, autism or Down syndrome or anything like that, I would just say, like, just no pressure, take one day at a time, be there for them, be their guidance, be their role model, and just see every little thing that they do as a success, and they will see that as a success, and they'll want to just continue doing stuff.
Thank you. Final few questions. Next one's for Iqbal. How can we motivate our children towards, Islam as a whole, if the parents are also learning about Islam, at the same level simultaneously?
Well, the chances are that even if the parents feel that they are in the early stages of their own journey, that obviously their ability to understand and their ability to kind of figure out how to communicate around certain things or explain certain things, I imagine would be greater. But having said that, I think it's also about parents exposing their children to resources that obviously will be helpful for them. So obviously, some of my fellow panelists here, mashallah, have done a lot of work to produce and to develop such resources. And I'm sure lots of parents that in the process of working through these resources with their children end up learning things themselves, right? Developing, depending on what the nature of those resources are, and certainly some more advanced things sometimes, even simple things they can learn themselves. So I think that the parent needs to take overall responsibility for coordinating the educational process. And a lot of that for parents generally, I mean, even just in their child's general education, is not about the parent knowing everything and teaching the child, but it's about them doing their best, obviously, with regards to what we're talking about, but also to expose their children to all the variety of things that are out there that will help them, and to a certain degree to create that independent desire, curiosity, interest, to learn and to figure out things, to give them problems almost to think about and solve and to explore. So I think that's what I would say on that.
And final question to Captain Zaheer. Should we be rewarding our children, over rewarding them in some aspects when they are improving their own life, when they're improving their education, when they're progressing in general? Is there such a thing as over rewarding our child?
Okay, good question. Well, first of all, rewarding as a general principle, if you're encouraging a particular action by rewarding it, then you expect to expect more of it, right? That's the point. So, and this is very important, just generally speaking, as parents, like think about what you reward children for when they, what achievements they come back with and what words of praise you might give or what prizes you might give, and think about how that might compare for other actions. Just be conscious of that as a parent. So is there such a thing as overdoing it? Of course there is. There's overdoing in anything. But again, that comes down to your judgment as a parent. And that's why I mentioned that as a principle when it comes to parenting. It's really about you understanding, when is that too much? When is that sort of spoiling the child? When is that motivation no longer having its, what we call, I guess in economics, marginal utility, when that's sort of diminishing? So each time you reward them, there's less of that effect. And that just comes down to your judgment. So yes, there is such a thing, obviously, and you'll naturally experience it, and you'll know what is the right type of reward for what action over time.
Thank you very much. Barakallahu feek to yourself and to everyone else for joining. So just in the best interest of time, as it is quite late and quite much later for people that have joined in from other countries, what I will do is I will select the winner of the giveaway that we have, which is the Towards Faith products, the MySalahMat books, the Kitab and Read and Rise from Learning Roots, and One Spot in the Transform My Prayer course by brother Iqbal Nasim. So I will select the winner of this giveaway based on the participants that we had. And inshallah, I will send you an email once the winner has been selected. As a sort of small print, you do have to be based in the UK for this, as when shipping internationally can become quite tricky. Although I do know that all of us do actually ship internationally, but the small print is that the winner has to be based in the UK. So I will select a winner, and I'll keep going through that random process until the winner is based in the UK. So again, barakallahu feek to the panelists. Thank you so much for your time, for being here. Jazakallah khair to all of you for being so interactive, encouraging, engaging, sharing your own insights, your own knowledge, your own experience on tackling this parenting problem that we all have, especially the screen time to worship time. So thank you, brother Kamal, actually, for that recommendation in the topic of this session. And if you've enjoyed this session, if you found it beneficial, please do email us and give us suggestions on how we can do this again and what topics you would like to have covered. We're more than happy to be hosting this multiple times throughout the year, bi'idhnillah, and with Allah's permission. And one thing I want to finish off with is Captain Zaheer said, starting with Allah first, and Iqbal mentioned that as well. And there's an amazing book by Learning Roots that's Allah Knows All About Me, right? It's called Allah Knows All About Me. And when I ordered this and I started reading it to my son, I started to sort of sing it almost as a nursery rhyme to him. So I'll send the mixtape to Zaheer very soon. But a lot of these tools that, mashallah, Iqbal, Kamal, and Zaheer and Naheedah has dedicated their time to, it's certainly not an easy job. It's certainly not an easy thing to do, but alhamdulillah, I'm so happy that in the next, the generation of Muslim children that we have will grow up with access to these tools, and they'll get better and better over time for each and every one of us. So again, Jazakallah khair to you all for joining. It's been fantastic to have you. I will send the recording to you all. So please watch out for that in the email. We'll most likely download this and upload it onto YouTube so you can watch it, at ease in your YouTube app. And we'll do that, inshallah, within the next 24 to 48 hours. So again, thank you so much for your time, for being here. And with that, inshallah, I'm going to end this session. And inshallah, I'll see you hopefully on the next session. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.